Oh, Jesus Christ, not with the montage again.
Okay, enough. Listen, Sony's first-party games are awesome and there is no need to make a cool montage with a badass soundtrack to prove it. Let's just skip the pleasantries and start with the show, okay?
Thank you. Jesus.
Nope, skip this one too.
Once upon a time, a Sony engineer that goes by the name of Who Gives a Crap or would actually remember even if I say it, was working on a special project inside of Sony. That super duper ultra secret project was none other than the sound chip for the Nintendo Super Entertainment System and the Super Famicom as it is known in Japan.
And for those of you who don't know the difference between the SNES and the Super Famicom, there is none. It's the same console, they just look and are named differently. Anyway, at the time, Sony was already top dog in the CDs market because CDs represented the pinnacle of storage when it came to the entertainment business. And if you don't know what a CD is, please go play Fortnite and leave me alone.
And we want those damn kids to stop skateboarding on the sidewalk!
The encoded information on this disc is read by a laser beam. That means that the picture and sound quality must be far superior to videotape reproduction.
Now, Nintendo knew the disc format was the future, and because of their collaboration with Sony on the sound chip, in 1988, they decided to go into business together. The deal was that Sony was to make a CD-ROM adapter for the Super Nintendo and the Super Famicom. Also, Sony made their own version of a SNES that was unofficially named the Nintendo PlayStation and worked with CDs as well as Nintendo cartridges. Apparently, Sony got a bit too greedy, and Nintendo shamed them publicly by saying that they actually got into business with Philips, Sony's rival at the time, a day after Sony announced that they were working with Nintendo. Basically, Nintendo was like,
I challenge you to a duel.
But after, Sony responded in kind with,
I accept.
So in 1992, Sony dropped everything SNES related and started to work on the original PlayStation that ran with 3D graphics. Now, I could go down the rabbit hole and talk about how Sony got into the gaming development by buying and founding studios, but that's not vital to our story. What you need to understand though is that the PS1 was a huge success, and for that generation, it blew the competition out of the water. Even the Nintendo 64 by outselling it more than 3-1. In other words, Nintendo had created a monster.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Now, can you imagine, because of that one incident, every generation of PlayStation ever created by 2020 has a spot in the top 5 best-selling home consoles ever? It boggles the mind a little bit, doesn't it? Sony's first-party studios have been making games for like a zillion years now, and that allowed time and natural selection to do their job and make them part of the social gaming consciousness. If nothing else, that speaks to the quality of these titles and makes the entire conundrum even more impressive when you think about it, because for every 1 million people who actually play the Sony exclusive, there are millions more that haven't, but heard of the game nonetheless. So let's dive a bit deeper and see what makes these games so successful. I want to start off with the most underrated aspect of every major game out there, the soundtrack.
The purpose of the music when you're playing the game is to give you emotional subtext. It's giving you hints of what the characters are feeling at that point. And that's what I think draws us to the gameplay and makes that connection with the characters.
No Game of the Year contender would be the same without epic music that burrows deep into your brain and makes you instantly recognize a title or a franchise in mere seconds.
It's like Pavlovian. You just associate that with him. And it's such a simple little thing. But it's a great trick.
Now for my next trick. I'm gonna need you to shut your eyes. I'm serious, just do it. It'll take like 10 seconds. I'm gonna leave the screen black anyway, so you might as well just do it. Okay? Alright, here we go. Now, if you're fans of the franchises I just played, I bet you instantly recognized each and every bit you heard. But even more to my point, I wanted you to feel something. I wanted to trigger the reward parts of your brain that studies have shown to make you emotionally engaged when you hear something very familiar. Because that's exactly what happens when you live through a pleasurable experience that comes together with a superb soundtrack and becomes iconic to you. At least that's what happens to me every time I hear any of these notes being played, no matter for how long. It could be for 5 seconds or for the entire song, and I still get sucked into the vortex of nostalgia and come out the other end experiencing melancholy and short-lived happiness.
I'm just a going over home. I'm just a going.
The gameplay is of course essential to any game out there. You can't have a great game boasting amazeballs graphics, an ironclad story, eargasmic sound design, but at the same time have mediocre gameplay. This represents another great feature about these exclusives, meaning that none suffers from crappy gameplay. That's not to say that older versions of some franchises couldn't have been much better in this regard. Take Drake's Fortune for example, the first real stab from Naughty Dog at such a genre that no one would deem revolutionary by any stretch of the imagination. All in all, it is a Lara Croft ripoff with Indiana Jones as the protagonist, but they just did it way better. It did build the foundation upon which the Uncharted series soared towards the heavens. And upon a closer inspection of a timeline of such a franchise, we can observe how long and arduous the journey was from a first iteration product to these cathartic experiences like Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us series. The same evolutionary trajectory can be said for other in-house studios like Sucker Punch with the infamous series that led to Ghost of Tsushima, Sony Santa Monica with the God of War saga, Guerrilla Games from Killzone to the Horizon series, which is a phenomenal success, Insomniac Games that broke records with their first crack at Spider-Man, Bend Studio with Days Gone, which I love immensely no matter what reviewers say, or Polyphony Digital with Gran Turismo, and so on.
Have a seat. I want to hear about you. Sam, where do I start? Start with the best part.
Now, one element that sets these games apart and makes them so endearing is that which helps us understand how the world works from the moment we achieve intellectual awakening as human beings. The stories, of course, are what makes narrative-driven gamers like me remember such experiences for the rest of their lives. It's the expertly crafted immersion, the suspension of disbelief that sucks us into an ancient Norse mythological age or makes us stare for 50 minutes at an abandoned pirate city like a jerk-off. And indispensable to the story are the characters, of course, that are granted life through great dialogue and superb acting by greats like Nolan North, Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson, Laura Bailey, Yuri Lowenthal, and so many others. And I'm not talking about just the main characters, but about the plethora of side characters that help complete the protagonists and give them context, actually shaping them into what they mean for you and I. Put that together with some of the best directors/visionaries in the gaming industry like Amy Hennig, Neil Druckmann, Cory Barlog, Hidetaka Miyazaki, and you get a lifelike tangibility that can warp your brain from reality into these alternative reality experiences that pull you so deep down the rabbit hole sometimes that only hunger or other bodily needs can pull you out of it. some of Sony's first parties are in fact just that. An evolved art form engineered for one purpose: escapism. For me at least, few other story-heavy titles can deliver this level of immersiveness.
I mean, what can I say? Another lost city destroyed, and we made it out alive. Barely.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
One of the most essential qualities a successful Sony first-party studio has is that mostly the same developers that created the initial game of a series are the very same ones making the sequels 10, 15, even 28 years later in some cases. And their success isn't just because the person who created the original story is the most equipped person to carry on the legacy, but it is because of the events happening in their personal lives that changes and matures them as individuals and ultimately as storytellers. For example, let's take a quick look at the hit franchise God of War. We'll start out by not going into the first God of War because Cory Barlog, director of the new ones, wasn't involved in writing or directing the very first one, he was just a lead animator on the project. Thus, we'll glance at God of War 2 from 2007, where Cory Barlog was director. According to the awesome David Jaffe, creator of the original God of War, who answered my tweet, God bless him, production for God of War 2 started in 2005 when Mr. Barlog was a young stallion of 30 in the prime of his life. He didn't have any kids back then, and the world was his oyster just like this.
Me, I want what's coming to me.
Oh, well, what's coming to you, Tommy?
The world, Chico. And everything in it.
In consequence, Kratos was unhinged back then, and no one could have found this character guilty of having any depth.
Athena!
But years went by and Cory became a father.
I kind of started thinking about this idea that if Kratos ever got a second chance, you know, this idea of like when I had a kid, I feel like my perspective on everything changed.
Along with that came the death of old impulsive Kratos and the rebirth of the new grounded, more seasoned Kratos. That clearly mimics Cory's evolution throughout life. So when a developer matures, so does his style of writing and overall creativity. But why does that translate to gamers? Well, my guess derives from what I personally went through in these types of situations, and that's because of mirroring. Let me put it like this. How old were you when you first played God of War in 2005, and how old were you when you played the latest iteration? I'm guessing that between the two games, you actually picked up a few things in life as well, not just Cory. Because in my case, when I was 15, 16 playing the first game, I was crazy about how violent, mindless, and brutal Kratos was. Because it's all about the coolness factor at that age, isn't it? But switching to 2018, after I figured out some things about how life works, old Kratos just couldn't do it for me anymore. So the newest and wisest version of him resonated with me 1,000-fold more because of it. Now to wrap this whole idea up, my entire point is that we as gamers mature alongside developers and can relate to the life experiences and lessons they synthesize and pour into their games as time marches mercilessly forward. When I thought of this idea many years ago, I believed, and still do, that it's quite amazing that such an emotional and intellectual connection is achieved between the developer and the player through the game itself, because it's acting like a common language spoken indirectly between the two entities. For my next idea, I'm not gonna go into how PlayStation exclusives are immutable from their studios, but I will try to point out what happens in an inverse situation, like a counterexample. So please bear with me and let's have a look at a flagship game with an incredible reputation that got handed over to a brand new team. I'm talking about Gears of War, but I am not trying to diss this game by any stretch of the imagination. I am very fond of Gears. So Gears 1, 2, and 3 were designed by the famous Cliff whatever, and developed by Epic Games up until 2014, the year of our Lord, when Xbox bought the rights to Gears and the IP found new ownership under the studio, the Coalition. Thus, the powers that be had this amazing franchise on their hands, and they had to develop a completely new but same Gears of War, all the while not interfering too much with the core design of the game. That's why Gears of War 4, made by the Coalition, although being a great game on its own, didn't bring any innovation whatsoever to the series, but was a mere replica of the other iterations that came before it. So this brilliant and talented studio had to cut their teeth first at the expense of one iteration, just so Gears 5 would be the awesome game it is today. And I am not saying to take this example as a rule of law, because oddly enough, 343 Industries hit it out of the park with their first try on Halo 4, but somehow they kinda blew it with Halo 5, and look at what they're doing now with Halo Infinite from a graphics point of view. This is a very odd situation indeed. But coming back to our point, PlayStation first-party games have been in a great capacity handled by the same people who were there when the initial project of a series was started, and that makes my logic sense tingle and deduce that it is also because of this reason that some of the greatest games ever created came out of Sony's front gate.
In my 16-year career at Naughty Dog, marketing has never, not once, gave us a creative note to say this should be in the game, or the game should be this long, or this short, or have this feature. Not once in my entire 16-year career has that happened. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, it just has never happened to us. The game is this long because we wanted to make it that long.
Now, I'm completely convinced there are a plethora of other reasons, but now I wanted to talk about trust. Because Sony puts a lot of trust in their first-party studios and doesn't smother them with bullshit deadlines and doesn't pull the plug right away. So Sony does the best it can with what it has, and if a repeat case of the defunct Evolution Studio happens, they take that loss and go with it. Look at Media Molecule, for example, that have been making Dreams since the PS4 was first announced in 2013, and Dreams just came out in 2020. That means that Sony has been financially investing in this game for an unimaginable amount of time. If that's a wise decision or not, how the hell should I know? I don't work there. But it has panned out really well for the past 20 years, hasn't it? I can synthesize this as a progressive way of thinking which doesn't say no for financial reasons only and puts trust into studios by letting them run themselves creatively and not interfering with the creative process. The best example is that of The Last of Us Part 2, where specific events didn't need to happen because it would have created divisiveness among the players, which actually happened, but they were fucking bold and did it anyway. Now hopefully Microsoft will share this approach with their newfound first-party studios and not pull an EA on them by killing single-player Star Wars experiences that are made by fucking Amy Hennig, the director behind the Legacy of Kain series and the first 3 Uncharted games.
Yeah, those bastards have ruined everything.
Anywho, that's my take on why most of the PlayStation exclusives are so damn successful. If you can think of any other reasons or totally disagree with me, I will be glad to read your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching this video, and please don't forget to hit the like, subscribe and bell button because YouTube loves it when a video gets buzz around it, and that will help us get recommended and thus our channel will grow and so on. So on behalf of both of us from Late to the Party Video Games, thank you for watching and stay safe.